Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're very happy that you've joined us. We're just going to give it another minute or two for people to enter, and then we'll get started. And while you're settling in, just a few housekeeping items that I can already begin with. So today's session will be recorded. So if you want to watch the recording, share it with your colleagues, you missed something, I'll be sending out an email with the complete replay probably about an hour after the webinar's over. I'll be dropping a few links in the chat as we go, so feel free to keep an eye open. And we will have dedicated time to answer your questions towards the end of the webinar. But feel free to add your questions down on Zoom where it says Q&A. You can add them there. That's the best place so they don't get lost in the chat. And you also have the option to upvote questions. So if you see an interesting question and you want us to prioritize that question, feel free to upvote it. That'll help us make sure that we answer the questions most important to the most of you first. Okay, so today is about a very specific problem that I think a lot of you are already living with. You're using AI tools for your research and the outputs are super fast, but you're not sure if you can actually trust them. And that's exactly what we're going to address today. So by the end of the session, you'll understand what the Scite MCP is, why it changes what AI can do for research specifically, and how you can connect it to the AI tools that you're already using, some listed here. Okay, so let me introduce our speakers. You can already see the friendly faces here on the call. So we have Josh Nicholson join us today. He is the co-founder of Scite and Chief Strategy Officer here at Research Solutions. Josh, want to share a quick intro yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. You're going to hear a lot from me, so I'll keep it brief. I'm a cell biologist by training. We started Scite back in 2018, really in response to growing concerns around trust and reproducibility. And as we talk about that, those challenges are bigger than they've ever been, especially with AI. How do we know if this is trustworthy? How do we know if this is reproducible? And for research, for learning, how can we leverage those extremely powerful AI tools with research in a trustworthy way? So excited to see all the questions and hear all the feedback. And thanks everyone for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. And then we also have Drew Barontini on, VP of Product here at Scite. Drew, quick introduction yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm the bald one with glasses that you may or may not have seen in some of our demo videos. But my job is working across design, engineering, and strategy to make sure that we as a team, we're building the right things and ultimately getting those in the hands of researchers, like what we've done here with the MCP.
Awesome. Great. Well, if any feedback to product comes up throughout the webinar, feel free to just add it here and Drew and I will take a look. My name is Julia Heesen. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at Research Solutions. Can't even pronounce our company name today. And as you can probably already tell, I'll be moderating today. Okay, so before I hand it over to you, Josh, let me pull up a poll here. You can already see some of the answer options. But we'd really love to know the AI tool that you're currently using, really to know and make sure that we tailor this the best we can to you and also interesting for you. I'm going to share the results with you all in just a second or two, so you can also see what your peers are using. And if there's a missing option, feel free to add it in the chat and I'll keep an eye open here. I use almost all of the options. Yes, that makes sense. I like to use different ones as well. ChatGPT. I use all of them mostly. Yep. Okay, I still see kind of many people voting, so let's just give it another moment here. Gemini, Perplexity, and Claude in that order. Use most. Google AI, interesting. So it's like so many options out there, it's hard to keep up. Okay, I think we've got almost all people in. So let me end this here to not keep you all waiting, and I'm going to share the results. Let's look at them together. Okay, yep. Looks like number one, as you can see, ChatGPT, followed by Claude, Copilot, and then the others. Some have some internally built AI tool, and very few, just 3% are not using AI tools yet. Yeah, this is kind of what we see across the board usually, right, Josh, Drew? What do you say?
Yeah, we're going to talk through some of the actual analytics that we see on MCP, and I think this reflects that. ChatGPT is used the most. You could probably even see our bias towards how we asked the question, where it was kind of stack ranked, and so I think
Yeah.
this certainly makes sense.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing this with us. Josh, the floor is yours.
Cool. So welcome everybody again. So before getting into kind of, the live demo and the MCP, I want to give a little bit of background. Why did we build Scite in the first place? How are we looking at this from a company and strategic perspective? And then what are some of the main problems that we're trying to solve, right? These tools do 10,000 different things. We're not going to do everything, but we do some things that are quite unique, and we want to bring that unique power into those tools. And so here I'm showing a variety of different headlines, tweets, things like this that show and demonstrate, and if you're on a previous webinar, some challenges that we as researchers, we as users of these LLMs face, right? And the biggest one has been hallucination, right? I don't think we've used the word hallucination so much over the last 4 years than we ever have, but it is a big problem, right? How do we know that this response from Gemini, from ChatGPT, is something that we can trust, right? Is it utilizing the best content? Is it utilizing any content, et cetera? And so we've come a long way where ChatGPT wasn't referencing any articles or any web pages. It was completely fabricating them here, but it still is a long way to go, right? It references the open web. It might miss certain things. And really, we're trying to make sure that researchers have the most trustworthy content. And so how do we build that trust into these tools? And I think trust is, really how this starts to scale. I mean that from like, okay, the output is good, but I also mean that from a security perspective, as well as an ethical perspective. And so the question here that we put to ourselves, and maybe because we're Scite and we see everything with citations, is can citations help with LLMs, right? Can citations help with organizing the web? Can citations help with organizing Wikipedia? And so we've given previous talks on this, and the short answer is I think they can, right? Citations have been a crucial part of organizing and attributing information. Again, whether that's the early days of the web where PageRank used to look at different web pages and would rank by citation analysis these different pages. And again, Wikipedia using citations with the catchphrase citation needed. And so here, I think citations play a pretty unique role with LLMs, and we're going to start to see the emergence of different citations across tools and then across research. And so we got started building the next generation of citations, not because we knew LLMs were coming, but because we saw a challenge of citations in academic literature. And so here is the main study coming out of my PhD. When you look at it, it's natural to look at where is it published, who are the authors, what are their affiliations, and then some metrics, right? How many times been cited? Is it from prestigious institution? Is it from a prestigious journal, et cetera? Historically, citations have been treated as a sort of flat list, right? And so this is what Scopus looks like. I'm not trying to pick on them, but I think they're big enough to be picked on anyways. Web of Science, all these different tools, all different citation indices have treated citations as if they're all the same, right? And they're not. There are literally dozens of reasons to cite an article. You can cite one in the method section. You can cite one in the introduction section. You can say, hey, I support this with some new evidence in a different system. Hey, I challenge this with some new evidence in a different system. And so there's many different reasons and ways and actually even times to cite an article that we're trying to surface through Scite. And so we want to bring that information to researchers, to students, to anyone interested in research so that they can very easily and quickly see, has this article been supported? Has it been challenged? How many times has it been cited? And then more generally, not just supporting and mentioning and contrasting, but what has been said, right? You wouldn't go to a Rotten Tomatoes score for a Netflix show and say, hey, 100 newspapers have mentioned this, must be a good show, because maybe all those newspapers heavily criticized it. And so, we have been really kind of developing this system of next generation citations for almost a decade at this point. And I think we're kind of in the right place at the right time to provide really powerful utility to tools like Gemini, tools like ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera. And I think the bridge that we're going to talk about there is our MCP. And so here's what our citations and next generation citations look like in Scite. This is an article that's citing my article. You can see we've extracted out the snippet of text that's generally 3 sentences. What they're saying about my paper is that it is in agreement with previous work. It's in the cites my study. And then they highlight that they have trisomic clones similar to showed similar aberrations. And then they even highlight where that data is. It's in the supplemental figure S2B. This was extracted from the results section and then has been classified as presenting supporting evidence by a deep learning model that analyzes the text here. And so this has kind of been our bread and butter since day one, is building out these next generation citations to help researchers look at research articles. Where this starts to get interesting is how this helps you look at AI output. And that's one thing that we'll talk about more today. And so where does this data come from? So since day one, we've needed full text access to the literature. We have partnered with publishers across all different disciplines, different sizes, to get very unique access and coverage to the world's literature. And we're very interested not just in biomedical literature. I used to have a saying, we would look at research that looks at Peppa Pig and how that influences English as a second language. We have studies on prostate cancer, and then we also have studies on particle physics. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about research, is that it covers everything. And we, as a society, as researchers, should ultimately have the best evidence, whether you're using that ChatGPT or whether you're using that in any sense. And I think that's, a broader aim of ours, is to make sure you have that trustworthy evidence and to, have better decisions based off that. Again, those use cases hey, someone in my family has, something that I want to research, or it could be, hey, you're a large drug company and you want to develop a new pharmaceutical. And so this is, again, something worth emphasizing. We have worked very hard with our partners to develop these next generation citations. Once we get access to that, we then have a pipeline that processes this. And so this is generally there's a lot of machine learning that goes on in extracting the full text of documents and then extracting those snippets. We then have a deep learning model that classifies those at scale. And we have published a paper in detail that describes this because, again, I think it's important, especially in the world of AI, to show how things are built, right? Show the limitations, et cetera. And so we can certainly share that with you as well. Again, beyond this, we have partnered with publishers to display this information on the version of record. So moving ahead of just traditional citations into this world where there's more context, there's more nuance, and there's the ability to easily see, has there been debate? Has there been supporting or contrasting evidence? And so this is what it looks like across a variety of different publishers. You can see it on Wiley, you can see it on Royal Society, it's live on Archive. It rolls out more and more journals all the time. Where it has not been, has been here, right? So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Grok, all the different tools that you're using, they do now reference and cite things, but what they reference and cite is mostly the web, right? And the web, as you know, can have everything. So you can ask a question about chromosome segregation. Maybe you'll get some good content from something that is open. Maybe that open publisher page is blocked, so maybe you won't even get that. Maybe it comes from a blog post. Maybe it comes from a Reddit post. And so the web is not entirely horrible, but it's also not peer-reviewed scientific evidence that has, data, has statistics, etc. And so we want to connect these extremely powerful tools where a lot of us start to live more and more for a variety of different tasks to the best, I would say, content, if you will, which is research articles, right? Research articles do touch upon everything, and they're, to me, the closest thing that we have towards truth, right? Maybe they're not 100% truth, but they have evidence, they have analyses, they've been reviewed by the world's experts, etc. And so we bring this through our MCP. So the Scite MCP is essentially the bridge that bridges research articles into different AI tools that you're already using it, so that you can leverage the amazing things that AI does, and you can leverage the amazing things that we've done with citations and with research articles themselves. And so MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is now a standard. It was introduced by Anthropic, but it generally is a standard that's been adopted across all the different tools I just showed. And it allows you to connect into these tools directly. And we are going to walk through these live, so you'll see how to do that. But this is very quickly, an ability to look at this, right? So if you search us on the App Store and search Scite, or even just search science, Scite will appear there on the ChatGPT App Store. In other cases, you might need to add these custom connectors or these MCPs to get it to display. But it allows us a very easy and powerful way of you to kind of copy just a URL and to bring that into these tools. And what are the benefits of these? And so the benefits of these is that you're running a full text search, right? So you're searching across all of our database. It's running that full text search based on your prompt. It identifies different articles. It will also identify if there's any challenges. This article that I've shown you, has it been supported, has it been challenged, etc. And then it also will get you to the end document, right? And so whether you're at a university, whether you're at a corporation, we work with a variety of different entitlement providers. So LibKey, GetFTR, Article Galaxy, a variety of different open URLs that will allow you to say, okay, here's an article I need, and then you have access to that article. And above all of this, the ability to run searches, the ability to see the summaries, the ability to ultimately get full text access, is the ability to analyze this. And so we see Scite, and we see the Scite MCP is really a powerful bridge between some big things, right? Universities are spending a lot of money adopting ChatGPT EDU or Claude Education or Gemini Education. They also spend a lot of money on subscriptions. Getting access to these articles costs real things that real people are paying, although sometimes that's removed from us. And so in this connection layer is Scite, right? Scite allows you to connect that content holdings, that library catalogs into chatgpt.edu. It allows you to have the best of these tool worlds in a seamless bridge where you can get access, you can monitor access, you can even see where there's gaps where you didn't have access. And so you might need to subscribe to that journal, etc. And so this, I think is powerful, not just for the end users as we demonstrate, but also for the administrators. The administrators can look at reports like this. This is a AI publisher report, but this can be done for universities, for corporations, etc. And it will show you, here is the content that's being used by AI, right? So how many AI reads are there? What is the breakdown of these AI reads? Where is this being done? To our earlier poll, you can see that OpenAI and then Claude, and then a more generic, Claude Code or things like this is following. And so this represents, pretty similar to us. And so this information is available for our publishing partners. We're also working with them to, really bring their paywalled content directly into LLMs. And then we also work with universities and different large corporations to also provide these analytics. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And so we can show this breakdown by publisher, we can show this breakdown by journal, we can also show this breakdown by individual articles. And so we're starting to look at these new ways of how is research being consumed and used in the literature across a variety of different tools and services. And to me, that is really kind of a first, right? It's brand new. People have long wanted to see how has different articles being used in this. And it's just been totally blind. And so again, there's utility here for the end user, for the administrator, as well as even for the publisher on this. And so this admin analytics, we provide an overview of AI reads. This is at the group level. So if you're a university or if you're a company, we can provide this. We can connect you to your LLM through our MCP, and then we can provide you a variety of different things, right? So what is the overall AI reads? Who's using this? Which LLMs are they using? At different institutions, you might have 5 different LLMs. You don't know how they're being used or which ones are being used most. That is displayed here. We can show you the searches being run by the users. We can also provide the resolution, right? Are people getting access to the full text of papers, or do they not have full text, right? Are there these collection gaps to really show, hey, the tool wasn't able to access because you didn't have access here. And then largely, we're also working on counter reports. And so counter, for those of you who are unaware, is really a standard that allows publishers and allows institutions to say, here's the use of the content, right? How many reads, how many clicks, how many downloads have been used in a way that is on the same level field so they can look at the value of this content, right? Is someone reading this? Is someone downloading this or not? What is new here is that we're trying to introduce AI reads. And so Counter is currently completely blind to this, right? It's just downloads, it is just views and interrogations and things like this. It has no concept yet of AI interrogations, AI reads. And so we're working with Counter and we're working with a variety of different groups to provide a new way for groups, and again, really kind of the whole community, to look at AI reads and AI use of research articles, because it is certainly being used, right? It is being used across a variety of these different tools. And so again, this is a blurred out view. You can see a variety of different things, what this usage looks like, how many articles there are, how many different sessions there are. it really kind of changes how we consume articles. I think it's pretty amazing that we're getting such amazing insights very easily from the best content in ways that can be extremely digestible to even non-researchers, right? You can utilize content here. You can ask for plain language summaries, and it's going to pull from the best content here. And so we show all this information, this breakdown, this aggregate. We also show a variety of different ways of setting this up. And so I've kind of rushed through this, and that was intentional because I think where it gets to be most exciting is in the live demo, right? And so how do we use this in these different tools? And we'll show a variety of these different tools, and then we'll open it up for questions from you guys. True?
All right. Let me go ahead and share here. All right, so I'm going to pick up right where Josh left off. I'm going to show a couple of things around how we can set this up in ChatGPT specifically, which is great because that was the top one in the poll. So we'll start there. Claude, which was number 2. And I would say probably for good reason. I think both ChatGPT and Claude are the ones that are kind of pioneering this the most. So they're making it easier to interface with it. Copilot and Gemini and some others take a little bit more extra effort to set up. So we'll just start with those initially. I'm going to walk through some basic examples, and then I'll pass it back over to Josh, and he's going to go deeper and give some more advanced examples in Claude and even looking at Claude Code as well. We do have a link to the MCP that we have on our site. So scite.ai/MCP. We will show this link later. It gives you all the instructions around how to set up the MCP in different tools like ChatGPT, Claude Desktop, which we're going to talk about. And it gives you any additional questions you want there, but we'll share this link out afterwards. So I'm over here I'm going to go to a fresh page here to show this off. So just a very vanilla version of ChatGPT. I'm actually not paying for ChatGPT at all. So this is a free account, which is also great because if you just have a site subscription, you can have a free ChatGPT account and you can try this out today. And it's by far the easiest one to set up. So there's a section in the sidebar called apps. So if you click in this is what they call them apps. I don't think anyone's really landed on what the name is. We just say App Store, but really it's where all of the MCPs that are currently published inside of ChatGPT's App Store that you can then enable in your chats. So if you search for actually science, which is interesting, and we like that we're here and only one of 2 alongside BioRender for that topic. But if you just search Scite, then that will come up directly. We're going to open it here. This will give you a basic overview of what Scite does, some of the metadata around that. You click this connect button. It's going to open another window. You can configure things if you want. I'm going to click connect. It jumped through that first screen because it just auto logged in from my session that I have on Scite. I'm already signed in, so I just need to authorize this inside of ChatGPT. It's going to jump us back, show that Scite's now connected. You can immediately start a chat here, which is going to automatically load it here. If you do not have that, you have to click the plus, go to more, and you select Scite here. So that is an important call out for ChatGPT. I believe there's some changes they're making, which is what Claude does, where it'll, based on the query you ask, it will determine whether or not it should call a specific MCP. But for right now, you can select it here manually to make sure it's part of the chat. So I'm going to copy in a question here. We're going to drop that in. And with Scite loaded as MCP in the context, it's going to receive that. And you'll see here, it's going to make a call out with some basic data to return that back from the Scite data itself. So that comes back here. We get an answer. This will always look a little different overall, but it's pulling from that rich data source that we have that we're passing through. And then what's more unique, obviously, for what we do with Scite is to show how research relates to one another. That's really important to provide more context around what's supporting, what's contrasting, what's just mentioning it, how does this actually relate? So it's going to run that response, do a similar thing. It's going to pull back more data here, and it's going to show that response with specific callouts to papers that are supporting that original question. So this will show each of those. It includes information, any DOIs that you could look up directly if you need to. And then this goes all the way through. So you can obviously continue to have conversations here. What's interesting from the MCP perspective is which I do not have here currently. I just have Scite enabled. If you had other MCPs, which this is continuing to grow over time, they can also communicate with one another. So you could have Scite and you could add an additional one and you could have conversations with both, which is really interesting because it enables some unique workflows. Like there's a Zotero MCP. So if you use Zotero as a reference manager, you could potentially pull data from Scite and maybe you add it to a collection or tag something or look at your Zotero library to see what you have that you're pulling back from Scite data. So a lot of power there. And that's something that you can do inside of these LLMs, in addition to their typical functionality of exporting things as spreadsheets, creating PDFs, which we'll show with Claude because there's a lot of fun things you can do there. I'm going to jump over to Claude here and very similar. So, they're all adopting a very similar UI and experience. So this is kind of number 2 on our list from the poll. So if you hit plus here, it works a little different. So we have some other MCPs enabled for ours. I'm just going to have this Scite one enabled. I'm selecting this option here for Claude, which just makes it a little more reliable. Essentially what it's doing is loading that tool, keeping it in context so I know it's there. It's not trying to determine based off of the question that's coming in. So we're going to ask a similar question here. So we'll ask, or the exact same one. So this will come back, it'll do a very similar thing. So you're going to see if you expand these menus, they'll tell you what the process it's going through. So you can see here, there's a Scite logo. It's running a request here. It's pulling back based off of a search term, pulling back that data, reading those results. If you collapse this, it'll show less of that information, but it's going to reach out and do a very similar thing that ChatGPT did. It's going to, of course, live demo cause an error. So let's see if it can work through it, which does sometimes happen. It'll hit an error. It's smart enough to run again and see if it can fix something. If it does not, I can fall back to an example I already have. So let's see if we get it on the second time. So you can see the request that's being run here. It's going to run it again. It's making progress. So it's calling, and this is pulling quite a large response set. So the response data did actually come back. So this shows 10,000 results coming in. It gives an answer here, and similar to ChatGPT, but obviously they're different models here. So this is currently running Sonnet 4.6 extended. ChatGPT would have just been the vanilla version of the default version of ChatGPT for the free accounts. We can see similar response here. Lots of very rich data explaining what's happening, calling out references, calling out the specific papers. We could do something like, let's say, show me a table of supporting and contrasting counts. So we'll kind of throw that in there. Again, trying to look at our citation graph to understand based on that answer, how does this relate? What's supporting this individual body of research? What's contrasting it? Getting a summary of that is really helpful. And so you can see here, this will call out Josh's paper. It'll show you how many are supporting, contrasting, and mentioning it with a total count, which is just a sum of all of those numbers. And you get that across all the research mentioning this. And as an example of what we talked about with Zotero, this would be a great place to look for these papers, understand what access you have. If you have institutional holdings that has this information for full text, pass that through to Zotero, really becomes part of the overall workflow. Now, Claude did release something recently that's really interesting. So they do these interactive visuals that will come back. So you don't just get text in there, you'll get something interactive. And I know there's this feedback loop, mainly because I've heard Josh talk about it a lot. There's a feedback loop related to this research. So if you ask certain questions, and I believe this is a beta feature for Claude, but obviously this shows sort of what the future can look like, the response may not just be text. And this is something we'll show further with things like Claude Code, where you can really build rich artifacts, graphs, visuals, living applications, things that can go way beyond just the text, which we think is really valuable. And there's lots of potential for that. So this one will probably take a little bit more time. We'll see what this one comes back with. So I'm going to jump over here while it does that. We'll see. And you can see what it's doing. Basically, it's looking at the research itself, the specific element of a feedback loop inherent to this research, and it's building a little interactive diagram here. I did a similar chat previously here. So if we scroll down, show you, ran the exact same query previously. So this, we'll see if it comes up similarly. But what's cool about this is it's not just a visual here, it's actually interactive. So you get this inline in the chat experience. It's showing at each of these parts of the feedback loop. And it's even referencing where this came from in each of those. So that you can see that this actually was referenced inside of a different paper. And this one was another paper as well. So these are all clickable. And you could do this across different types of research. So this was more of a social sciences based question in psychology. And this one, I asked a question later on about creating an interactive visualization of the evidence landscape. So it put together this chart, basically this graph, putting these different vectors across this group. So you could do the same thing. You could kind of filter them down and you can click into these and interact with the research and the data underneath it and really creating a visual that's anchored to how you want to understand it, your own research. So we'll go back over here and see if this one's still taking a little bit more time. So we'll let that run. But again, same thing. It's giving you a call out to what papers this is built off of, and it's doing this all in line. And one thing you can do with Claude is you can also take these artifacts that are embedded in here, and you can also save them as something. You could save it as a PDF, an HTML file. You could take all the research and compile it with a list of references in a PDF or a spreadsheet. There's a lot of potential for that. And then if there are other MCPs like Zotero or others that will continue to come out, you'll be able to do more things because we know research doesn't just stop here. There's a lot that happens once you actually create it. And once you research it, you're trying to build it, put it in artifacts and presentations, which these tools work really well for. So this one's going to take a little bit of time. We'll let this one run in the background for now. I'm going to pass it back over to Josh, who will jump into more Claude examples and some more Claude code, which is a little bit deeper from here.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. I mean, it's to me still pretty amazing to see some of these things, the interactive figures. Like I didn't even appreciate that you could do that until Drew showed me. And the amazing thing is that it is fully referenced. And I obviously intimately know my studies. It's right? And so it's hard to believe like how quickly you can really get the power of this. And I think that's only going to grow, right? And I think above one thing which we haven't fully mentioned on that is that everything Drew just did, if you're an admin, say at the university or whatnot, you would see, you would have this information tracked. And so I'm going to jump to Claude Code first because I'm going to show you something that will run there, and then I'll run a few more in Claude. Here is where I start to live a lot, right, in Claude Code. MCPs can be added there, and this is as simple as manage MCP servers. On that page that Drew showed you, there's instructions how to add this to all these different tools. It's mostly just copying in a URL and then authenticating via email. And so it's pretty simple. In ChatGPT, it's one button because we're already in an app store. In Claude, you have to add a custom connector, things like this. But here, for Claude Code, I'll hit MCP. You can see Scite is there, and it's connected. Maybe I'll re-authenticate just to show you guys what that looks like. Again, very similar process to what Drew just went through. I then authorize this, and now it says authentication successful. And so in this case, let's say, I'm going to ask a question similar to what Drew is looking at. This is what I spent, better part of a decade researching. Does trisomy increase the rate of chromosome misaggregation? Write a short report with references, interactive figures demonstrating the mechanism, and a table comparing studies. Create this as a web page. And so here, this is going to, you'll see it, very similar to ChatGPT, call our MCP. And in some cases, depending upon what you want, it might take, again, 5 minutes. 5 minutes might be too slow for this demo, but it's extremely fast in case of the world, right? Like building these things and doing this stuff would have been months or years of work. And so it's really kind of a transformative time for researcher, for publishing, for a lot of these different things. And I think the MCP that we're showing here is the first of many, right? We've mentioned Zotero. There will be other tools, and we've already seen librarians using our tool with other tools. And I kind of think that's great because, we are doing something that is quite defined, quite differentiated, and quite unique in this case. And so I think Scite, will have a variety of use cases. And so I'm going to let this run in the background. You can see it's searching these different things, it's looking at chromosomes. Again, maybe this is just filling my ego because it's always finding my study, but it is really going through a lot of that. This is, again, also being tracked, right? So the Scite admin interface will look at that. It'll see how many AI articles are being read. You can also obviously look through click-throughs, etc. If we do bring this back over to Claude, again, similar to Drew, you can put in this prompt. You can see these different connectors here. I'm going to actually show you one with Article Galaxy. Article Galaxy is our sister product. And that is a way that mostly corporations get access to documents. But the reason I want to show that to you is that this is not just about getting references here, it's also getting access to the full text at the end of that. And so we have a variety of different ways of solving that, whether you're a university, whether you're a corporation, et cetera, to provide you to something that you might subscribe to that you can have this, right? So here it's running a search. You can see it's loading this visualizer modules. Now it's going to build this report, create these interactive figures. And this will be very similar to what Drew is looking or presented. What will be different is after I do this, I can then say, get me these articles. And if it gets you these articles, it will see, do you have access via your institutional subscriptions? Is it OA? Do you have AI rights to this? Or can I even buy or rent it, right? And again, maybe as a student, you're not typically buying or renting content, but large corporations often do, especially where they don't have a subscriptions. And so this is starting to draw these merotelic attachments, which is when chromosomes are dividing, they get stuck in the middle. That happens because of these specific attachments. And it's going to really give out this full report. In this case, I can come over here. You can see, it's jumped for 2 minutes and 39 seconds. It's done a comprehensive report. And so now I have comprehensive literature. Let me create the interactive web page. And so here, again, I just described this. Now we have this beautiful way of looking at, how this actually occurs. And so this is really like, okay, here they are, balance segregation, the extra chromosome disrupts protein stoichiometry. Now we're getting very into it. That's extra proteins. And then you can see there's this connection, right? The microtubules from both poles connect and they do a little tug of war and ultimately it will missegregate. And so, this is an extremely powerful way to look at, to understand, and to utilize literature. And, again, the unique aspect here is that we're bringing this into these tools, right? Scite itself on the platform can't give you a figure, but Scite plus Claude, Scite plus ChatGPT can give you these beautiful, powerful figures. And we think, really that's going to be a lot of the future of this. Here it's putting, again, this comparative table into this. It's giving it some key findings. It's looking at different trisomies. It's asking this question, did it increase chromosomal instability? And then it gives this synthesis. It will even, use quotes directly from the literature. Here are these references that it used. Again, these are all just DOIs. And so you could say, get me these articles. You could also, as Drew said, say, add these to my reference library. And so we're starting to get into this space where it's, plain language prompts to better understand things. It's now checking access. So it's going to look at, okay, here are the different DOIs that we need. Is this OA? Is this something that my institution subscribes to? Can I buy or rent it? And so here it shows open access, free, no purchase needed, and then required purchase where you can have this, right? And so this is, for corporate, but is really kind of an extremely powerful way for you to utilize research content for answers and then also for access. And we view that as Scite for answers and Article Galaxy for access, as well as a variety of different things. And so this is new for us. It is constantly developing and I think quite powerful. And so here, again, this one's still running in the background, 4 minutes and 50 seconds. This, though, is even more powerful in many ways because you can run a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to run in the browser. You can create a web page. You can create an interactive app based on chromosome segregation. And AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. What is unique is our access to literature and using that for better insights, better data, so that it's not just making up things, but it's really relying upon the peer-reviewed content. So here, let's say one more. I think it'll be done soon, and then we can look at this. So you can see now it's creating this HTML report. The report's ready. And so here, again, I think it took 5 minutes. Let's look at this. It took 5 minutes and 32 seconds. And here's the question we had. Does trisomy increase the rate of chromosome missegregation? An interactive review of the evidence for aneuploidy-driven chromosomal instability. It gives a nice introduction, key evidence. It will look at, these different figures. These are even animated figures. So prometaphase, metaphase is when they line up, anaphase, and then, different outcomes where there's extra ones. And so you can tweak this. Maybe you don't like the colors. Maybe you don't want this. Maybe you don't want it to look like a reference report. We spent 5 minutes doing this. Here's what it looks like across different studies. These are where I added extra chromosomes to my studies and then this breakdown. So again, bringing the most powerful aspect of AI, which is creating this beautiful web page, interactive figures in a couple of minutes, and the most powerful aspect of Scite, which is our next generation of citations together, really allows, a very powerful experience, which to me is going to be much of the future of research, how we do research across different tools. And as Drew mentioned, if you look at ChatGPT's App Store and search science, there's only two apps. So I think we're early to this, but I think this is where everything is going. And we think this MCP is a good bridge into that. And so I think I've seen probably 50 questions. So we want to leave enough time for you guys to ask some questions. Hopefully this is a good taste of how you utilize our MCP, how you can set that up across a variety of different tools, how that can work in ChatGPT, how that can work in Claude, how that can work in Claude Code. In other cases, Copilot, Gemini, Gemini CLI, there's a variety of different ways of setting these up. We're happy to help when you get to those, but it is mostly just, adding a URL of ours, and then we do some auto authentication. Let me pull up some slides and we can turn it over to
Yeah,
Julie.
I got it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh and Drew, for walking us through this. So I'm going to add a few links here just to make it as easy as possible. So now that you've seen it in action, the good news is that what Drew and Josh just walked you through is available to you today. So if you are on a paid site plan, you can connect it to ChatGPT, Claude, any other MCP compatible client, and you'll be up and running in about a minute, just as they showed you. So the steps are with that first link, Scite AI/MCP. It includes the steps. If you have any additional questions, now if you're on a organizational plan, enterprise plan, either ChatGPT, Claude, whichever one it is, and you're interested in getting Scite added as that research layer on top, feel free to reach out to our sales team, and they'd be happy to get in touch with you as well. Or if you have like maybe more complex questions, happy to take that offline too. I think I also someone asking about Copilot. So I'm just going to add a separate link here. This might make it easier for you. And lastly, I also saw a few of you now before we go into questions asking or having some trouble adding it. So I'm also going to add our awesome customer support team. They are super quick in responding. So feel free to reach out to them in case we weren't able to answer your question on this webinar. So just want to make sure that we've got everything covered. Okay, so are you ready for questions? Just reminding you all as well, you can upvote questions, so feel free to use that functionality as well. We're gonna start at the top here. Could you explain why Elsevier is not part of the publishers?
Yeah, so we utilize open access content from all publishers, right? And so if it's open access, we have it. And so we have millions of Elsevier articles. We do not have a direct relationship with Elsevier. I think largely that is because they're, building competing products, right? And so our approach to this has been there's going to be multiple different LLMs. We want to go to those different LLMs as opposed to be a standalone island, right? And so obviously there's competitive nature and things like this. We would love to work with Elsevier, and maybe one day we will. But currently, we do not have 100% of their full text. We have all their OA content, which is valuable. The other thing that I can highlight, though, is that utilizing your institutional subscriptions, if you have access to Elsevier and if you have that information, this can be brought in. And so where we have gaps that you might not have, again, the MCP acts as a great bridge to that. And I think that's a powerful thing worth noting because this has always come up. What about Elsevier? Well, if you have access to Elsevier, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Because you can use this through the MCP.
Awesome, great, thank you. Good question. Okay, how often does Scite hallucinate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a simple response to that. There certainly can be hallucinations, with any LLM. I think sometimes hallucinations can be, hey, it was confusing. It asked a secondary source. Maybe it didn't give a full response here. Ultimately, we are synthesizing content from the literature, and generally, it's not making stuff up from the literature. The challenges will be, if it somehow utilized, you gave it a prompt and it didn't use the literature. And so in some cases, you might see what would look like a hallucination and is a hallucination, but your settings were set too strict that it didn't actually use the literature. Oftentimes we warn users of that, but they miss the warning and say, hey, Scite made this up. And like, well, it gave you an answer because you pushed it to give an answer, but it didn't use the literature. With that said, we do look at, basically the ability to pass different benchmarks across different tests and tools utilizing Scite MCP plus all these different ones. And we have some internal reports that look at this more holistically and more concretely than what I just described. And we're working to share that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good question that many people have. So how is consensus in ChatGPT different to or similar to Scite?
I think the key difference from Scite and other tools is that, we've started partnering with publishers almost a decade ago. A lot of these newer tools are based on Semantic Scholar, which is a powerful resource, but it is not everything, right? And so building relationships with publishers takes time. And I would say, we have 40 plus different indexing agreements that have allowed us to build these next generation citations, and newer groups like Consensus, have a handful. With that said, we've seen users already use them both, right? If you toggle them both on, you can kind of get the best of both worlds. And so Drew shared there's a PubMed MCP. And so it doesn't hurt to have multiple of these things toggled on. If anything, it's probably better. And I think that's where we're getting to is like there's going to be an MCP for this reference manager. There's going to be 5 different MCPs for search. Maybe use one, maybe use 5. You start to experiment, and ultimately, you'll see where the coverage and what, makes sense for you. But, the shorter answer is largely coverage.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I like this question. I may have misunderstood. Does it only provide results from the publishers your company has partnerships with, or does it also provide results from the library subscriptions?
So it will search 50 million full text. This is from partnerships that we have. So it's running this search across this full text. It's not doing LLM across all of the full text, but it runs a search off there. From there, you'll identify here's the different articles. If it's OA content, it'll use that OA content and you'll get a synthesis answer from that. If it is not, it will say there was a collection gap. If you can solve that gap, it can use that. And so I am not a university with millions of dollars in holdings, but if you are a university with millions of dollars in holdings, you can connect via libkey, via getftr, via different open URLs, and then that information can be added to plug those collection gaps. And so it depends on who the user is, right? And if you have access. But yeah, the idea is to bridge the gap between the very expensive and valuable subscriptions and access and content and the very expensive and valuable AI so that you're getting those together for the best outcome, the best answer. You're also seeing how those are used for those different things. And you're, seeing, okay, people are utilizing more and more AI to read articles than they are almost as humans to read articles. And so we want to track that. We want to make that accessible. And we can do that through a variety of different paths. As you saw, you could even buy articles and then utilize those. And so that is, again, accessible to corporates primarily, but is a way to kind of imagine, how you might use an open URL if you're a university.
Yes, love it. Okay, so does it mean that when ChatGPT, for example, answers your questions, it will only look or only create the answer based on published scientific papers, or will it also look at other sources?
So you can set it, right? You can define and say only use the MCP. You can, as Drew showed, I think on his, he had the MCP and the web search on. And so I think, again, a powerful thing about this is we don't have financial filings. We don't have a lot of things that's on the web where there is value. You can have the best of both worlds, right? So Scite is going to be the research articles primarily, but in the same search, you can also ask questions about financial filings or about whatever. And so it'll use all the powerful aspects that already exist in Claude and ChatGPT. And that's, I think, why everyone's using it. It's extremely powerful already. What is beneficial here is that it connects to the literature and then it connects to the holdings of the literature as well. And that's powerful to get better output, better responses, real references, less hallucinations. And then if you're an admin, ultimately analytics on that, because otherwise we're all kind of flying blind, right? How are the students using this ChatGPT EDU subscription? Which articles are they putting in there? I haven't seen any of this. Are they using this to ask questions, etc.?
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with all the questions here so I don't miss anything important. So, how many papers will it search through? Is it a way it ranks the papers and searches the top 100, let's say?
Yeah, Drew, maybe you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can take it. And I think you're referencing that little pop-up I opened that showed the limit. So really what it's doing is it's searching everything we have in our database. We do a ranking. So we look and we rank it based off of relevance. So what comes back, it's not just random sample. So it's still limited the set that comes back, but it's almost like Scite has curated what comes back relevant to that query that was sent from ChatGPT.
Okay, awesome. Okay, can you ask the LLM to provide the citations for the materials it used to compose its original answer and to provide those citations in text?
Yeah, you can certainly ask for it to do that. Generally, it'll often do that, but if you want to be more explicit, you can say, add it like this, give it this format. We showed some pretty very flexible approaches where it's like creating interactive figures and things like that. And so, yeah, it just all gets down to what you need and how you prompt it. You can have a web page, you can have it on the browser, you can create a Word document out of this. And so I don't want to say limitless, but it really kind of just gets down to your creativity. And I'm still surprised by some of these things, right? What I showed you in Claude Code with those interactive figures, I mean, it's remarkable what it can kind of do. And as you can kind of tweak things and say, that's not exactly what I wanted, it generally does quite good at that. And I think that's why we have different preferences for Claude or for ChatGPT. Some of these things are better than others. But the short answer is yes, it can do that.
Awesome. So does the MCP facilitate the user seamlessly going from the list of citations to an access point within the library subscribed resources, or does the user have to copy and paste into a different interface, for example, a library catalog, to gain access?
No, that's the beauty of it. Seamless, right? So again, if you're signed up with an institutional account, you will have, special links. You can even say, get me those access, whatever you want to describe it as. It's extremely seamless. And so you don't have to like copy these DOIs in there over there. It leverages via OpenURL, via libkey, via getftr, all those different entitlements that you have to make that extremely seamless. And I think that's the really, amazing part of this is not just giving you good content for good answers, it's also giving you access. And if you're the admin, you see both, right? Where is the content being used? Here's the content that I subscribe to. Oh, this is how it's being used, how it's being accessed. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of even still hard to believe because it just works kind of so seamlessly.
Love it. Could you share the instructions for connecting to Gemini, please? Do we have
Yeah,
that?
so Gemini will only currently work on Gemini CLI, so Gemini Code. So Gemini hasn't fully added this. As far as I know, administrators of Gemini might have different powers. I am not an administrator of Gemini. And so we can share and follow up with a blog post that shows how you can add it to a variety of different things. Under this, I can open up Gemini and I can run Claude Code there as well, if this goes. But yeah, there's a few different things, right? And so here's a list of MCP servers, and you can see I've added Scite here. And so you can add it here. I don't think the browser version currently accepts that, but that is something also that we are happy to work on with you to discuss because I think administrators of Gemini might see more than what I see.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have a little bit of confusion of how Access works. So if we already pay for ChatGPT Premium, by getting a site subscription, we no longer have to pay for ChatGPT Premium, or did I miss something here?
I mean, you can use it. So in ChatGPT, you can use it with free ChatGPT, right? What Drew showed you, he's not paying for ChatGPT. He has access to Scite and he's run it in there. ChatGPT has benefits to paying, right? They have more advanced models. They can do more advanced things. You can save your, history, etc. And so you might want to do both. And so, it's not that we're a replacement for ChatGPT. It's that we provide, really kind of the literature superpower into these different tools. With Claude, we're not yet in their app store. We're under review. And so you have to have a paid Claude account because you need to add a custom connector. And so, yeah, hopefully that clears things up.
Yes, if there are any follow-up questions, please do let us know. Okay, so it would be nice to hear your opinion about which AI to use for research. Which one do you think are the best in different situations or research topics?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a pretty broad question. I am a Claude user, right? I don't pay for ChatGPT anymore because I started using Claude. I think a main reason for that is that I use Claude Code, right? And so Claude Code is extremely powerful. It's been adopted by a lot of different things. You can develop web pages, you can utilize all these things. And so I am personally using Claude. A lot of our team uses Claude. With that said, ChatGPT is still by far the most used, right? And I think universities, if they have a chatgpt.edu subscription, they've invested a large sum of money. It makes sense to probably use that. You don't have to pay out of pocket, etc. And so there's different reasons, different use cases, and these groups are kind of in a big race, and so it's constantly changing. You know, this model is getting better, this model is getting better, this one's getting cheaper, etc. And so I think that all comes down to a variety of different factors, who you are, what you're using it for, etc.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we have 4 minutes left and we have many, many open questions. So let's try to answer as many as possible. And then I'm also gonna share the link again so you can reach out if we miss something. And I'll also have some of our colleagues reach out to you to make sure that we get your questions answered. Okay, I think this was a while back, but is this true for Claude as well? Can I use my paid site account with my free version of Claude?
You need to add a custom connector to Claude, right? And so Claude, again, to add a custom connector, you require a paid plan. So the short answer is no. You need a paid account for Claude and for Scite.
Perfect. More of a comment. Would love the instruction for the AI plus site plus Zotero flow. Love it. In terms of content, is the app any different than the assistant on your website? Is it just LLM interface?
I think there's some difference, right? So we are returning content here. This is utilizing OA content in this case. It's searching across full text, and I understand that it's somewhat confusing and somewhat nuanced. It runs a full text of that search. It will return what I, as a user, have access to, right? And so if you're an individual user, you might not have access to all these different things. So it'll return OA content. In the app, it will utilize paywalled content that we have access to. And so I think, that's one difference. The other difference is you can't do these things in the app, right? And so the ability to create these interactive figures, these tables, these web pages, that all lives over here. And so I kind of see a lot of people starting to move from the app into the MCP workflow because these are getting more and more powerful. And I think, we want to combine the best of both worlds, right? Where you can create an interactive figure, you can create a web page. These are things that Scite's not going to do, but what Scite is going to do is focus on literature coverage, literature access, and these next generation citations, bringing those into these different tools.
Awesome. How confident can we be of the accuracy of these answers we're getting even through this new MCP?
I think we try to think of things always from a perspective of making it easy for you to check. And so I think that does tie into like, can I get access to verify this? They are getting better. I think already, if you don't have Scite, that's a step function where it's like, okay, it's at least using peer-reviewed articles versus non-peer-reviewed articles. And so there's a lot of layers to these things. And you guys probably don't all know this, but like these things, I'm like, okay, yes, I remember these are the cells with normal chromosomes. This one had an extra copy of chromosome 7. I saw an increase there. And so I think that is why that access part is critical, right? You might want to verify these things, but already starting to utilize the literature is pretty powerful beyond just the open web or not even the web at all, just the training data.
Amazing. Okay, well, I appreciate you running through these questions as quickly as possible. I know we're out of time and we want to be respectful of all of your time. And I know there are quite a few questions we didn't answer, but as I said, we will make sure to follow up with you. Also, I'm just going to send the links here again just in case it got lost. So the URL for the MCP setup, head over there. Feel free to reach out via that contact sales link. You can directly book a meeting if you'd like to. And then also our customer support team. They're super quick in responding. Really, they're incredible. So please do reach out and we'll make sure to follow up. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We do hope you found lots of value in it. Thank you so much, Drew and Josh. And I'm wishing you all a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.